Greetings, sending you all some warm, positive vibrations. This is Kwasapeacefull Eating, aka Body-Culinary, also known as Kwasa, personal trainer, professional chef, natural born woman. Shout out to you, whatever your form of expression is. And it's early. I'm an early riser. This is usually the time of the 5 a.m. workout, and I'm up ahead of schedule. And I wanted to come on this morning, this early day, my favorite time of day, to speak about the need for a cocoon, a cocoon, a cocoon. Why a cocoon? I have long observed the calling, the intuitive calling to basically disappear. I've said it often. I think that women, definitely women of Afro descent, but I feel, and this is just one woman's personal perspective, I really see the need for us to disappear off of the scene. The need to retreat, disappear, almost like where did all the women go? Where did all the Black women go? Where did they disappear to? It's time for us to go into the cocoon and bloom. Now, I'm not here to tell grown folks what to do, especially not in this day and time. But if you are observant at all of the tone, the climate, the behaviors, I'm not a religious person. I've had my stint in all kinds of religion and spirituality. I'm traveled. I have quite a bit of life experience under my belt. I'm on the second half of life. But with life experience, you get to see patterns, not what you think, what you know, what you've experienced. And I know I'm smart enough to know I don't know everything, but there's something very distinguished going on when we look at the amount of violence perpetuated on women. When we look at the amount of violence perpetuated on the planet that sustains us, which doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make one iota of sense. If you look around at the average midsection, right, which is telling a story, I'm not talking about body positivity. We want to appreciate a living body temple, the human suit that we have. But if you look at our tendency to self sabotage and even destroy the very human suit that is our vehicle on this 3D earth plane, doesn't make any sense. If you look at the violence perpetuated on each other, on the creatures on this planet, can you not feel that something is off? Are we perhaps so desensitized to violence, so desensitized, everything is a joke, how we treat each other? Can we not see clearly the results, right? What has been put in and what is coming out. And so as I look at some of the newer artists that I've just more recently become aware of, and again, I remember when I grew up on hip hop. And I remember when the adults were like, turn that trash or turn that garbage off, right? I remember that distinctly. I remember the music that had messages in it. And I also remember some of the contradictions, right? As someone who's grown up in the church, I remember as a child the contradictions in the church. I remember the contradictions even with hip hop. We have a tendency to want to glorify things because it's ours. And I can say that definitely as a human, as an Afro person, as a Black person, right? What's known as Black. I see the tendency for us to want to hold dearly on to our culture, to our Afro culture, our African heritage, to hip hop culture, to Rasta culture, to American culture, right? To hold on to these different things, in our groups. Though today, with the advent of this internet, something has intensified the tendency to cult mob like behavior, the tendency for us as humans to be extremely triggered. The basic human fears, which I've spoken about, I didn't make them up, they're primal. The basic human fears, which I've spoken about on this channel, those basic human fears: fear of poverty, fear of old age, fear of death, fear of loss of love or never finding love. We say old age, death, loss of love, fear of criticism, These are basic human fears across the board. And so, with some life experience, now I can articulate these fears and I can see the patterns. I can see where there are universal truths that no group of people owns. And I can also distinguish uh, the fears being triggered through social media, being triggered through religion, my perspective, respectfully, through marketing and advertising. The threat, if I don't have this perfume or scent, if I don't slick down my edges, I won't be chosen. If I'm of a certain age, if I don't have a degree, if I am a single mother, if you have a past, if you've been in jail, fear, 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 fear. And fear and shame are really, really, they're powerful. It's you can get people to do anything. You can get people to hurt each other, put on a uniform and kill each other. You can get people to destroy the planet and destroy themselves based on fear. And so some simple patterns that I've been able to discern are trauma. Trauma. At some point, most human beings, as we can see, will be exposed to some type of trauma. I don't think we'll leave this human suit without experiencing some form of trauma. So I also have been able to distinguish PTSD, if you're familiar with it, and CPTSD, now there are terms for it, trauma. And I can distinguish when that is inflicted on little human beings, how it sets the trajectory for our lives. And currently, I've seen this for a long time, it's only intensified. We are being encouraged, it's being fed to us, it's being justified and rationalized for us to basically offer ourselves. And the difference between now and chattel slavery, and there's been different forms of slavery globally. The difference now is you're going to pay for your slavery. You're going to pay to take yourself out. You're going to pay for your vices. I was able to distinguish, not a perfect human being by any means, but I figured out a long time ago, basically, I don't want to be on a whole straw or a slave to any product. I don't want to be a slave to mascara. I don't want to be a slave to lust. I don't want to be a slave to products, cereal, fast food, definitely not cigarettes. It makes no sense. I don't even have any idea how much cigarettes are. I used to go to the store for my grandpa and get him a pack of more red for 50 cents, and he let me keep the change to get some now layers or get some candy. But when it's triggered, do you ever contemplate what would make somebody abuse their wife or abuse their children or be so harsh? It's trauma, a lack of communication skills, definitely being dysregulated in the body, right? Sometimes basically nobody's home. We're inside the shell, but inside the central processing unit, the CPU, we're processing memories. A lot of times we're not at home and we're striving to make ourselves feel better, to comfort ourselves from the stress, from the sense of impeding danger, psychologically, subconsciously, because everything that's ever happened to you is compressed into your subconscious. Your subconscious, doesn't forget anything. It can't. It can't shut off, right? So the body is on alert. The mind is on alert, not the mind. The mind is a function of the brain, right? But that part of the brain that's set up to protect you from people arguing and fighting, anything that could compromise your safety emotionally, mentally, physically, it's on alert and it's having reactions. Does anyone ever wonder how we could come out of college and higher education, right? And I've had numerous clients that have 2+ degrees, yet still can't manage to stop overeating, overindulging in alcohol, overindulging in things that are basically killing their organs and killing the body. We can't seem to stop engaging in behaviors that at this point we know will jack up your reproductive organs. They don't lend to any esteem. Though, can we not humbly admit how easily we are conditioned? It is quite alarming. It is quite disturbing that the current music, nobody is questioning it, has folks ready to off themselves with their reproductive organs. It will have us put ourselves in harm's way. So my own little simple rubric I figured out for myself, way to do this. Principle: do not willingly, consciously put yourself in harm's way. See, the principles over the people and the personalities. So perhaps in your quiet reflections, do you put yourself in harm's way with your food, with your relationships? Are you subjecting yourself to abuse? Are you putting your reproductive organs in harm's way? You're putting your kidneys, liver, spleen, and brain in harm's way. This seems so elementary, but this is deep. When I see young women, and I'm not going to say that the previous generations, my generation, previous generations didn't do it. It's just more intensified. It is so insane that the music is having women, and it's not limited to 20s and 30s, playing Russian roulette with your reproductive organs and your sacred parts. We get turned on by behavior distinction that has no care, no responsibility. There's no discernment. The people that put themselves up, or that we also establish as religious leaders, political leaders, we're constantly playing the game of the lesser of the evils. It's like, and this is not to be insulting, but sometimes watching farm animals, when I drive around, I'm like, oh my gosh, you'll see the animals, the fence is this low, and the cows are right there. They could jump over the fence and be out. In certain seasons, I watch before Easter when they're about to be slaughtered, and the cows are like, moo, slow, lethargic, slow to get out of harm's way. Where does that come from? Where does that come from? Do you ever question how your psyche works? I'm not talking about religion or your whatever story makes you feel more comfortable with the fact that we're going to exit this body. Do you question? Are you discerning? Can we not admit, especially at a younger age, we mimic and we follow. We mimic and we follow. We will follow others off of a cliff, because it really takes something to not go along with the crowd, especially as humans. We penalize those that move and think differently. Those are usually a lot of times the humans that come up with a lot of solutions. But all that to say, it's time to go into a cocoon and bloom. I remember when I was working, and there's a lot of things I don't speak a lot about on this channel. And I've been told you should speak about these things, but a lot of times I don't. So one of my mentors is a popular holistic health person. And I remember I love reading all the books on her shelf. And she and some other elders around gave me some gems that still serve me today. And I used to buy books, right? After reading about Malcolm X, was one of my first intense books without pictures. And I remember the visual of this man who used to be like a pimp, drug addict. And I had a vision of him, reading the book. And I was like, is this a real book? Because it was a book now without pictures. I was like, is this a real story? Detroit Red, I think they used to call him. And I remember he had a dictionary. And when he was in jail, he was re-educating himself, if you will. And off of that picture in my head, there was a black book table, some black books that sold books when I used to work on Wall Street. And when I used to get off of work, I would always go to the book table. And I was like, wow, I have to re-educate myself. Now, this idea was sparked from me reading Malcolm X. And I bought a big, thick Webster dictionary, thick one. And I wrote in the book in the front, because after all, I have to educate myself. It was 1991. And I vowed to myself, I would always take a portion of my check, right? Because I had a good job. And I would buy books, right, to re-educate myself. And so one of the books that I bought once was called, I think it was Radiance from Beyond the Waters. And I picked up the book because there was a woman on the cover with the most beautiful, I love cornrows. I saved my money for years to get this one style. And she had the most beautiful cornrows. And I bought the book because of that. I thought it was a little complex. But I was drawn to the book, and when I opened it, it was about the Sunday Society of the Women of Sierra Leone, the Mende people, which later on wound up being the people in Joseph Sink, the Amistad. I don't know if you ever read that book. It was, what movie was based on the Amistad, right? Joseph Sink, well, That was his name that was given to him, but it was an African guy that he got back on the boat, whatever, went back. But anyway, the Sunday Society had something called the Kacoon. And this concept just riveted me. I was very into African dance. As a young woman, I was looking for something. I was looking for something. I was looking for some guidance. Not that I love my mother and my family, but I was looking for something around womanhood, some guidance, some wisdom. I was looking for it, and I was willing to pay for it with my money. And this book, and I was surrounded with my mentor, all these different healers and these different healing personalities would come through the door, like much older than me, but I was totally enamored between that and the books on the shelf. And I remember reading about the Kapuнгwima was the place where the women would go. And they said that the women had a glow when they went, the young women, right? When they reached a certain age, they would go into their family saved up all this money so that they can go into the Kapuнгwima, which was a sacred place in the forest. Men were not allowed there. Men had their own secret society to learn the culture and the values of men. But they were dressed all in white. They got woken up at wee hours to do African dance. Somehow this was just like sending off sparks in my brain. I like African dance. I'm looking for guidance. But they said the women had a glow because they were fed the best foods inside the Kapuнгwima. All of this stuff fascinated me. I held on to that book for years. I'm really upset that I lent it to somebody and I didn't get it back. But that always stayed with me. It was a place that was set aside where they learned about the functioning of their bodies. They learned about their own culture, about marriage, about intimate relations, about childcare, about breastfeeding, your sacred parts, about the different recipes and cornrows. And it was a time for women to be together and talk about your menstrual cycle and what you could look forward to in the different cycles of life, how you wrap your hair, just how you use herbs. And they say women that came out of the Kapuнгwina had a glow, right? Almost like a glow you get when you're pregnant, because you have so much nutrition in your body, and you're also being doted on, and you're being cared for, and you're being nurtured, and all your questions are being answered inside of the Kapuнгwima. I read something later years called the Red Tent. Maybe a biblical kind of similar type of book where the women went to discuss, you learned about your period and you learned about sacred sexuality. Can we really say that women are getting that anywhere? Are you getting that in anecdotes and mythical stories in your religions? Or is it a lot of more fright and fear? I don't know about you, but when I look around, the fright and fear has not been enough to keep young women out of the abortion clinic. It has not been enough. And I recognize this as a child, right? My family was very religious. I get the principles, but as a child, I'm thinking like, if folks spend all of this time in church, now I don't want to miss the start of, we're getting ready to start soon, the Kacoon. If all of that church for all of those years going to 6 o'clock service, Sunday school, 9 o'clock service, 12 o'clock service, bringing trays of potato salad and fried chicken and collard greens down for everybody and raising money for a new rector room. If that hasn't been enough to keep people from numbing out on cigarettes, alcohol, and drugs and abusing their wives and their children, something is missing. Something is missing. I could discern somehow the music makes you feel good in the church. Love gospel music. But somehow it hasn't been enough to help people process and resolve and move beyond trauma. If anything, I would say now, with some life experience, just one person's observation, I actually have observed that most religions are re-traumatizing. People are re-traumatizing themselves, right? You get very, very emotional with the prayer and sometimes a little meditative. But as soon as the prayer or the music is over, leave church. And what did they say? Go to church on Sunday, you party on Saturday and go to church on Sunday. Something is missing. We're eating ourselves to the point of deformity. We're eating ourselves to the point of deformity. I get distinguished body positivity and respecting the body that you have still works. And you're not all of who you are is not your skin, your hair, your makeup, your size. But also if you look at the amount of suffering and the scars and the the damage that we're doing to ourselves is a lot of wasted resources, a lot of wasted time. But it's saying something about the ineffectiveness of processing trauma. It's definitely saying something about ineffective communication skills, right? Because if the older generation and the teachers and the adults and the politicians haven't been able to model effective behavior at and what they're modeling to the children, it's just an endless cycle. Now what's currently popular is breaking generational curses. And I can just definitely tell you, as an Afro person, a Black person, we love the rituals and the bindi and and the henna, and everything is astrology, and it becomes a bypass, even a form of escapism today. And I get it. I get the desire to escape because of the fear. So a lot of times we'll to just not be present. And that's understandable. If you have to escape, if somebody was in Auschwitz or in maybe Auschwitz in your neighborhood, or the gunshots or the fighting in your house, it makes sense that you retreat. There's a part of your mind that's going to retreat for safety. So someone, just one person's personal observation, if you traumatize somebody and mishandle them, and that's also like a vampire bite, if they've been mishandled, their body parts, if it hasn't been dealt with and they've been introduced to intimate relations when they don't have the maturity, if they've been mishandled, if they're constantly subjected to violence, whether that violence is inflicted on them or they're observing violence, then it's going to make you feel very unsafe, which is going to trigger fear. It's going to trigger fear. So how can we process and resolve all of this trauma so we can get out of the negative, get to ground zero, and make some progress without managing these fears and resolving the things that we've experienced and that has been inflicted on us as individuals and as a collective? It seems that we're regressing, going backwards, or looping the same thoughts over and over and over and over. There's a lot of nervous anxiety. Many of us are eating, not because we're truly hungry. The stomach is small. We're looking at our midsection. The stomach is small. And what's being marketed to us are chemicals, not healthy community, not healthy relating, not double dutch, not spending time in the garden together, not appreciating your own divinely assigned features. The solutions are creating 20, 30 more problems, ongoing problems, generational problems that are so much greater exponentially than the initial problem or challenge that you had. The solutions are creating slavery. You become indebted to the drugs. You become indebted to the protein powders. You become indebted to the guru. Without the books, would you be able to figure out how to treat each other? You really mean to tell me we can't figure that out without a book? I'm sorry. I would have to disagree. So all that to say, it's to consider going into the cocoon to bloom. Some people might think, go in and do what? What would I do? How do I meditate? How do I calm down my mind? It's becoming to a point where we don't even, we're imploding on the inside and we're becoming non-functional, and it's become socially acceptable. It's become normalized. It's become common. Doesn't mean healthy. And as a group, we don't see enough examples of those folks being vulnerable and courageous enough to say that I don't know. We don't have enough pastors saying, I'm right where you are. I'm just as addicted as you are. Just a lot of excuses. Blind, literally leading the blind. You're being encouraged to play Russian roulette with your reproductive organs. The tendency, and this is not to shame, the tendency for us to put large amounts of, we don't even know if we can call it silicone glue in our backsides that doesn't have nerve endings in it. The fact that we don't feel comfortable in our skin as we age, something is off. And I don't see any solutions forthcoming. There is no way around observing the thoughts and the discomfort and examining it. There's no way around the discomfort. right? Because after you come down off of the high, it's still there, and time has passed, and we are aging, and we're not even comfortable with aging. It's become distasteful to wear your real skin. Isn't that something? That's bananas. It's time to go into the cocoon and bloom and examine what is there. The 3 leverage lifestyle practices. Leverage. I say leverage because they give you back so much more for the investment of your time and your energy. And that's the other thing. As one coach said to me, if you want to know what somebody's serious about, take a look at their checkbook and take a look at their calendar. If you're just doing accounting, do an accurate accounting of how you have actually spent your money, how you have actually spent your time. Imagine that you invited a business consultant in, right? Because you want a different set of results before your business shuts down. I like to say, run the numbers. And if you're doing accurate accounting, what do you find? We simply sitting on YouTube, as this one guru said when I used to go to an ashram, some people go sit by the guru and want to get warmed by the guru's fire. Our tendency to want saviors, Jesus is going to give us a brand new body in the afterlife after you jacked up this one. Doesn't make any sense. It's nonsensical. But that says something to our propensity, our tendency to disassociate. We're not inside the body, we're in the flavor in our mouth. We're in an image that somebody else made up of what's attractive to who. For what kind of, are we competing for the best, caring, intimate treatment? It's time, I invite you to consider, it's time to go into the cocoon and bloom. And I feel so fortunate that somehow, probably through my grandmother, I figured out volunteering. I figured out investing and paying my money to shorten my learning curve. I figured that out. I figured out at some point fresh fruit. If I had known about fresh fruit and vegetables and pineapples, if I had that, I would have never had to eat the now laters that were jacking up my teeth and my body, making me more and more addicted to the sugar. Time to go into a cocoon and bloom. Our religion is not what we say. It's how we are spending our time. It's what you do. It's not what you say in your own quiet time, personal reflection. It's not what you say. It's what you do. In your quiet moments, you reflect on the fears and the negative self-talk that has you hemmed up on the ropes, like Muhammad Ali. I'm stupid. I'm fat. It's too late for me. All this in your own mind, your own mental, which is only thoughts, which is only mental conditioning on repeat. And if you really think at this point, I figured out early on, the food and the music, the food and the messaging, the food is information. Everything that's going into your holes is information that must be processed and digested by your central processing unit, your brain. It's real practical. It's really, really practical. It's time to go into a cocoon and bloom. Not just sit there in meditation, repeating affirmations, while when you get up out of the meditation, you turn off the gospel music, you go back to the same thing, the same behavior. Don't you question the self-sabotage? Not other people's. And then we're drawn to go back and forth with people online, strangers. I question anybody that would encourage me to compromise my ability to make sharp decisions, to compromise my organs. That doesn't make any sense. So I'm humbled by how easily we are conditioned. It's time to go into the cocoon, disappear off the scene. You're not missing anything late at night. We're not missing anything. We're zoning out as a distraction. Distraction is on steroids right now. It's about time to go into a cocoon and bloom, if that is something that you are called to do. I'm inviting you all to create a great day on purpose, simply because you said so. We're about to go in and feed ourselves the best foods and use movement as deep therapy and also as fun and also as release. These are lifestyle practices that you have access to. Well, if you have enough room for an exercise mat, if you have a knife and a cutting board, There's not that much clothes. We have more clothes than we can ever wear in 365 days. I don't know how we're functioning with 20 tons of makeup on. I couldn't wear nails in the garden. I couldn't get anything done. I could run down the street in uncomfortable heels. Who is writing these narratives that we are enticed by? The music and the food. Like, comment respectfully. You're welcome, world. About to go into this cocoon. See you soon. Have a great day.